Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon. I am not here with Geeky Sparkles, but we're going to talk about the comic book industry and some weirdness we're seeing in the in comics Twitter. It's become very obvious to me, and I really don't pay a lot of attention to the drama on comics Twitter unless it makes the news. But it's become very obvious to someone like me, who only half pays attention, that there's definitely something going on behind the scenes with the comic book industry, the mainstream comic book industry right now. There seems to be a lot of salt. There's a lot of blocking. There's a lot of panic. I don't know. Maybe it's panic. Something is definitely up, so much that I've actually noticed. And I'm gonna talk about it, trying to get some legit takes as to what is going on. I asked around, and it seems to be a combination of things. It seems like the mainstream comic book industry sees all of these major talents, the major talents that they have left, leaving the industry in droves, one way or another. Either people are going to crowdfunding, people are going to Amazon or Netflix, and they're getting deals that way, or they're going to Substack and they're getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to develop their own IP, but they're not staying at Marvel and DC. All the people who can get out from the mainstream comic book industry are getting out, and it seems like the people who are left behind are incredibly ass mad. That just seems to be the surface level. I'm sure there are a lot of other things going on, but that seems to be the surface level observation. People are realizing that the direct market, I'm not talking all comics, but the direct market is kind of on life support at this point, and things are not going to get better. I mean, we're hearing rumors of books getting canceled. There are probably going to be more cutbacks at DC Comics after the Warner Discovery merger, despite the fact that Jim Lee's out there saying, no, things are fine. Things are all fine here. It's all good. Of course they're saying that because they're hemorrhaging talent, a lot of their top talent. The only time we've ever seen this kind of a mass exodus from mainstream comics, the big two, like this before that I can think of, was Image back in the day. And now we've got Spawn 30 years later, topping anything that Marvel and DC has put out in a number of years. And same with Boom with Berserker, selling 600,000 copies, selling through Kickstarter, even though the industry tried to stop that. It just seems like people are realizing that there are a finite amount of lifeboats, that the people who can take them have taken them, and they're fighting over the lifeboats that are left. Again, that might be an oversimplification, but we're gonna talk about it. So before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. Over 232,000 subs. Thank you so much for the support. We do talk about comics. We talk about animation, talk about anime, talk about the business of making things, comment on pop culture. And, having worked in comics before and having voluntarily left, I might add, I actually left the comic book industry on my own because it didn't pay enough. And I had a family to provide for and a mortgage to pay. And comics was not a viable career choice. The only way that you make enough money to really make a living in comics is if you're like a top shelf Marvel and DC creator, which I was not. I worked on, mostly licensed books, and the page rates were not great. They weren't. So, we kind of packed it in. We did some creator-owned stuff. We're trying to resuscitate some of our ideas from years ago and bring them out now, because there does seem to be a market for new ideas. People are getting tired of reboots or established characters being ruined. And I think the general audience is getting kind of numb to it. I mean, we didn't even bother talking about the Robin situation or the Superman situation, that the replacement Superman, Superman Jr. supposedly is going to be gay. I don't know. I don't care. I really don't care. Doesn't affect me at all. And I think the general public doesn't really care. The only people that care are working in the media. Same with Robin being gay. Tim Drake supposedly is gay or bi now, I guess, bi. Because they have to do that because he's dated girls before, I guess. nobody really cares. The mainstream media is like, oh, Robin's bi. A Robin is bi, even though there's not enough evidence over the years to support it. Just like Iceman was suddenly flamboyant and gay, and there was no supporting evidence. It's done for shock value, because if you really wanted to be diverse and inclusive, you'd create brand new characters, right? And you'd promote them properly. But, whatever. It's done for shock value, and it's kind of, this is like the early 90s repeating themselves. Like Marvel and DC had to shock people into buying their comics in some cases. We're going to kill this character. We're going to do that with this character. Oh my God, 25 different covers and you got to buy them all. And guys like Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, and Jim Lee, who probably really wishes he was working on his own stuff right now. But he's locked into a contract with DC. Those guys left, and they went and they started their own company with Image, and they started publishing their own characters, and a lot of them were very successful. And Todd McFarlane continues to be incredibly successful, 30 years later. That does seem to echo what happened in the early 90s. And you know what happened after that, right? Just a year or two after that, big crash that I don't think the comic book industry has ever fully recovered from. I watched the Evangelion movies over the weekend. I'm thinking, yeah, that was like the second impact, and now we're headed for the third impact. Like, we never really recovered from the second impact, but the third impact is going to basically change the industry forever, one way or another. It's going to change for the better or worse. I think it's going to be better for a lot of people and worse for a lot of people. I mean, there are people that mocked those who were critical of the mainstream comic book industry and who went out and started crowdfunding and all of that. And now they're out there, trying to get money on GoFundMe or whatever, because the work's not coming in anymore. It's the ant and the grasshopper, right? I mean, that's kind of what we're looking at here. So anyway, I put this tweet out last night because it has become very obvious that something's going on. There's been blocking, there's been salt, there's even been doxing. All over comics Twitter, seemingly out of nowhere. What the hell is going on? Is there something I have missed? Geeky did chime in. She said eating each other over a Substack biscuit. That could actually be part of it. That I don't think is I think it's not all that, but it's Substack on top of many other things. Basically, everybody who can leave the comic book industry, the mainstream comic book industry right now, is taking a lifeboat out of the mainstream comic book industry, and they're leaving everybody else on the island. And it's going to wind up being like Survivor. The people left on the island are going to fight each other, and backstab each other. But they're also going to fume about the people that left and the people that enabled them leaving. I mean, we're seeing so many big name comic book writers leave for Substack deals. I mean, geez, Marvel and DC must be so fantastic to work for and so secure that the first chance they get, the first time somebody waves a couple $100,000 under their noses, they're out the damn door. Nick Spencer, Hickman, Tinian, Scott Snyder, Scotty Young, Chip Zdarsky. I mean, everybody's like, they're freaking leaving. And if they're not leaving for Substack, then they're leaving for like Amazon or something, or Netflix or Image. But they're getting the hell out of Marvel and DC. And something is definitely going on. The only thing I can compare this to, and there's a lot of outrage now about Comicsgate, which is so weird, because it seems like it's coming out of nowhere. Like, Comicsgate was like a big thing 2018, 2019. There were a lot of really angry pros denouncing Comicsgate. But from what I can see, it looks like the mainstream industry went their way and the Comicsgate people went their way. And the two really didn't cross over that much. It didn't seem like there was much going on. And then in the last couple of months, all of a sudden, Comicsgate's a thing again. Comicsgate's a hate group. Let's talk about it again. People are talking about it all over Twitter again. And again, I haven't seen a major catalyst. Maybe I've missed it. But I haven't seen a major catalyst for all this renewed talk of Comicsgate. But we saw this with journalism too. Gamergate wasn't a thing for many years. And then all of a sudden, Gamergate became a thing again. Why? Well, news outlets like BuzzFeed, Vice, Vox, Gizmodo, they're running out of venture capital. Just a theory. I can't prove it for 100%. But a lot of these news outlets are running out of venture capital. They have to make money on ad revenue. And the best way to make money on ad revenue is to go back to when you got the most hits, which was talking about things like Gamergate and even The Last Jedi. We've talked about this before. Geeky and I were like, why are we still talking about The Last Jedi 4 years later? Why are we finally revealing how Palpatine returned in The Rise of Skywalker 2 years later? People don't care anymore. Or do they? Or do they just hope, these journalists hope, that people will care again, and they're trying to start more fights because when there were fights, there was money, there was ad revenue. And, we're kind of looking at these media outlets, trying to go out and get venture capital now, and they're not doing very well. BuzzFeed cost Universal $100 million, and they're scrambling for investment capital now through an SPAC, and they might not get it. And 12 to 25% of their revenue comes from like Amazon referral links. So BuzzFeed's not doing great. They're very top heavy, and they're probably telling their writers, go write shit that brings hits. And what brought hits? Well, Last Jedi brought hits. Gamergate brought the hits. I don't know if that's the case now with Comicsgate, but there is a lot of talk about it. I mean, Jerry Ordway is talking about Comicsgate, saying that they're being fleeced for hundreds of millions of dollars on Twitter. We've got She was actually at one point in time a very well-respected independent comic book series by the mainstream comic book press. It was always featured in Wizard magazine. You're being fleeced for hundreds of millions of dollars from creators who, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them paid their dues in the mainstream industry. And a lot of them are just bringing back properties that they worked on in the mainstream industry. And I'm not talking about like the Trump comics necessarily, or the super political comics or whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, like She, like Snowman, like Creed, like Cyberfrog. These were all pre-existing 90s properties, and they're just, bringing them back. So, but now all of a sudden it's, this is a scam, because these guys took the lifeboat when they saw where things were headed. You might not agree with what they say. You might not agree with the politics if politics get involved or whatever, but they took the lifeboats when there were plenty of lifeboats left, and now we're running out of lifeboats, and you're going to be stuck on the Titanic. Pat Zurcher, thinking of joining Comicsgate, conning the rubes, and then mailing them a woke, liberal, progressive comic. That's what he said he's going to do. He's not one of us. No, really, Hail Caesar salad wore something. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. Jerry Ordway. I don't think these guys, either one of these guys, and it's unfortunate because I've actually enjoyed, their work over the years, but I don't think either one of them would really pull a bunch of money, on crowdfunding. Unfortunately, they wouldn't, especially like that, where you're like blocking people. So what's going to happen? What is happening right now, and we talked about this with Kickstarter, is that there are Kickstarter employees that are blocking anybody who follows anybody that's even arm's length, affiliated with Comicsgate or following Comicsgate people. There was a conversation I saw yesterday on Twitter where someone's like, I had to unfollow you because I see that you followed some Comicsgate personalities. Well, what if just hypothetically speaking, what if you followed these artists when they were working for the big two and you forgot about it? You're still getting blocked. So it seems like they're looking at Kickstarter as being a bunch of lifeboats, and they're gonna lock these down. Like, well, we don't want the wrong people to take these lifeboats. Is it really about that, or is it really just about professional jealousy? Aaron Lopresti has apparently thrown in with Comicsgate. He's got a comic coming out. Again, this is another guy who worked for the big two. We're seeing more and more and more of this. A lot of the names that are associated with Comicsgate now compared to, I guess, what it was, 3 or 4 years ago, where you had a bunch of people that weren't really, professionals. And I'm not throwing shade at anybody. I'm just saying, it has changed. It was people who just wanted to make their own comic books, a lot of independent creators too. Now you've got people coming in from the big two, and they're throwing in with that too, because they saw how successful, financially successful, people like Ethan Van Sciver and Dan Fraga and all those guys have been, Art T-Bear. And these are all guys that pay their dues. They did in the mainstream industry. So why all of a sudden it's, fleecing now? I don't know. I think it's salty. They're running out of lifeboats. People know that we're getting to the end of the line. DC Comics, they said, yeah, they're always going to publish comics, but now they're jumping to Webtoon. They're going to outsource their characters to Webtoon. Well, that probably means, I can't say for sure, but that probably means that they might put more resources into producing Webtoon content than producing monthly comics. And we're seeing a lot of people not get their contracts renewed. We're seeing a lot of people, getting gone, not getting that next graphic novel deal, that Netflix deal, whatever. People, again, when you're supposed to be an established pro, not making fun of anybody, look, we've been up and down all over the place, but when you're supposed to be in like Flynn with the industry and you have to go to GoFundMe just to pay your bills, something is wrong. And so there probably are a group of people that are looking at this whole situation right now and being like, I effing hate you. And I'm just going to say it's because of your politics. I'm going to say that's the reason. But the reality is I hate you because you're making money. I can see you're making money. I look at these crowdfunding numbers and you're making money and I am not. And it's not fair. Reasoning like a child. It's not fair. I should be the one making $400,000, $500,000. It should be me, not you. But the thing is you had the chance. You had the chance to take a lifeboat when there were lots of lifeboats. And you didn't have to be Comicsgate. People jump into Substack. They're not Comicsgate. People, boom, going to Kickstarter and ignoring Twitter. They're not Comicsgate. And they still made millions of dollars. There were more lifeboats. You could have taken one at any point in time. Instead, you mocked or blocked. You either mocked people that were trying to jump ship, get off the sinking ship, or you tried to block them from being able to take a lifeboat. Because by God, if the Titanic is sinking, you're all going to drown with me, right? You're all going to drown with me. Tom King saying weird shit. That's whatever. Tug says there's no catalyst, has been that way for a while. Yeah, but it's so obvious that I'm actually picking up on it. And I'm dense about these things sometime. I agree with Tug. It's been building and now they're mobilizing in droves. Yeah, there's something going on behind the scenes. It's not just Comicsgate that they're smearing. They're trying to smear Indiegogo as a platform. They're trying to smear Substack as a platform. Basically, any platform that I can't make money on, you should not be allowed to make money on it either. Nerdrotic. The end is nigh. The end is nigh. Life goes on, honey. Pros are having temper tantrums. Again, years of relative quiet. I haven't seen this kind of salt since 2017 and it's going. Everybody's trying to jump ship the Substack though. Even the New York Times is trying to do subscriber only newsletters. I thought this was interesting. I saw it this morning in my inbox. They're not doing Substack, but they're going to make you pay for their newsletters. And, New York Times is another one of these publications that's been hurting financially. So I'm starting to see that this is where people are going. I mean, one of the comic book blogs I follow and I support on Patreon, okay, I'm not going to name check, do your own research, but they've been mostly inactive on Patreon for years. And all of a sudden this week, hey guys, we're going to start doing some more reporting and it's time, the world needs us now. We're going to do a newsletter and we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And it's like, everybody's like, oh crap, the ad revenue is running out. The publishing deals are running out. We don't know what's going to happen with DC Comics or Marvel Comics because Disney or Warner could tomorrow snap their fingers, make it all go away. I saw a video Sweetcast did yesterday about, I think it was Action Lab, just canceling books, for whatever reason. They're like, yeah, book's done, but it's not coming out. Can't really talk about why. I'm guessing money. It's not coming out because of money. Here we have Joe Albino Thunderbuns Fulton, Joe Fulton. Back when you were on the Pontificators with Art T-Bear. Yeah, I was like a year or two ago. This sort of thing had already entered Facebook loop territory, but could still be camouflaged by CYA specialists. Not enough of them are left after the Facebook feedback loop went feedback array. And that, yeah, if we're talking about the Whisper network being exposed, that might have been part of it. I don't know. Just everybody's leaving. Everybody who can get out is getting out. And I think ground zero for a lot of this stuff is Twitter. Like all of this insanity is comics Twitter. People are quietly leaving, or if they're leaving, some of them are leaving Twitter altogether. James Tinian is leaving Twitter altogether. I have really thought about it. Last fall almost did it for me, where I actually left Twitter for about 3 or 4 months, and it felt pretty good. But I didn't want to leave my wife stranded here all by herself. So I kind of jumped back into it, but I hate Twitter. I really do. And this is where the crazy people come from. I'm 100% serious. Like, normal people don't use Twitter that often. They're using other things, or they're just staying off of social media, or they're emailing, or they got, private Discord or something like that. But they're not on Twitter constantly. The people who are the blockers, the salty pros, the doxers. They're hanging out on Twitter all the time. They're watching everything you do, everything you say, because they're miserable and they want you to be miserable. And how dare you? How dare you be allowed to make money if they're not making money? That's the mindset. And it might just be that simple. I don't know. But just be aware. I think things are going to get worse before they get better. If you have the opportunity, you're working in comics right now, you have the opportunity to get the hell out of Marvel or DC or whatever indie publisher you're working for that's maybe on death's door because of the distribution situation, the comic shops, whatever. Get the hell out. Get out as fast as you can, because I don't see things getting better for the direct market at all. Manga's eating your lunch. Digital's eating your lunch. People are just moving away from comics altogether. And why should people stay? Why should they stay? Look at what they're doing to your favorite characters. Look at what they're charging for comics. Look at all the variant covers and the tricks and all this other shit. Why should people stay? You're not giving them a good reason to stay. And now so many of the top writers and artists are leaving. There's no reason to stay. So get out while you can. Going to wrap it up. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. We'll talk later.